Welcome to the FBC Midlothian podcast. We hope today's message will speak to your heart and draw you closer to God. To find out more, visit us on the web at www.fbcmidlothian.org.
Sing it with me now. There's a peace I've come to know, though my heart and flesh may fail. There's an anchor for my soul. I can say it is well. Jesus has overcome, and the grave is overwhelmed. Come on, sing it. The victory is won. Yes, it is. He is risen from the dead, and I will rise when He calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God. I fall on my knees and rise. I will rise. There's a day that's drawing near, when the darkness breaks to light and the shadows disappear, and my faith shall be my eye. Jesus has overcome, and the grave is overwhelmed, and the victory is won, 'cause He is risen from the dead, and I will rise. Oh, when He calls my name, and no more sorrow and no more pain. I will rise. I'll rise on eagle's wings before my God. I fall on my knees and rise. I will rise. And I hear the voice of many angels sing, worthy is the Lamb. And I hear the cry of every longing heart, worthy is the Lamb. And I hear the voice of many angels singing, oh, worthy is the Lamb. And I hear the cry of every longing heart, worthy is the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb. Yeah. And I will rise when He calls my name. Come on, church, sing. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God. I fall on my knees and rise. Oh, I will rise. I will
I'm Stanley Johnson. I've got a great family. I've got a 4-bedroom house in a great community. Like my car? It's new. I even belong to the local golf club. How do I do it? I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. I can barely pay my finance charges. Somebody help me.
Okay, how many of you can remember when that came out in 2004? I remember watching that and hee-hawing on that particular commercial. And we actually showed it at the old building back in '04. And I am here today, now 7 years later, saying we still haven't figured it out as a culture. There's no commercial that I know of that represents what's been happening in our culture better than that. We continue on and on and on, still making the same mistakes, still doing the same things the same way with the same results with no change. Now, somewhere in my past, I heard that was the definition of insanity. And it really is. It's a strange thing to look at our culture and to know that we have all the resources in the world at our fingertips, but we don't use them. You look at all the resources at a bookstore. You can walk into Barnes & Noble next week and you'll find the stuff, Personal Finance for Dummies or Kiplinger's, and you'll get that perspective. You can look at the first generation of Christian financial management by Larry Burkett and the stuff that I remember reading 25, 30 years ago when it was first coming out. Or you can go and you can find my twin stuff, Dave Ramsey's Money Makeover or the financial piece, and you can actually do the class. But every single one of those will come back to some of the most common, basic denominators of making good choices, wise decisions because you've been informed. With all that stuff that's readily available, that you could go in and over a cup of coffee speed read if you really had a mind to, we still don't lean on them and we don't use them. Maybe because of pride, maybe because we think, well, I don't really need it. Or maybe because we are clueless at how much trouble we're in. But with all those resources at our fingertips, readily available, we still don't use them. We prefer the bliss of naivete or denial. And it's for that reason that we have launched an initiative called Greater Things that has 3 parts. And if you received your mail this week and you opened it and you read it, then you'd know this. So here are the 3. Number 1, that we'll be starting a 4th service on Sunday nights. This is homecoming weekend. We finally have some space around us, but for the last several weeks, we've had full services and the parking lot's been full. And if you're looking for my gold truck on Baylor, look no longer. I am now on the other side of the bank. So I don't want to get a call and say, well, we didn't think you were there because we didn't see your truck. You'll have to look in a different spot. But starting that 4th service. Second, that we would deal with our debt as a church. Our banker loves us. We're ahead of schedule, but we're not ahead of schedule of our growth as a church family. So we're trying to knock that down as far as we can. And the third one is the one I want to talk to you about today. It's part of the Proverbs challenge. It's in the core of all those chapters you're going to read. We decided that we needed to have a major 3-year initiative to help families learn healthy financial practices. So you're going to see for the next 3 years, Resources in the Compass, a whole section devoted to that. I can tell you that every semester we're going to have at least one instructional, coaching, financial planning kind of resource for people to go through to get some of those resources and make those good decisions. It's an epidemic in our country what's happening with debt and with struggle with finances. And so over the next 3 years, you're going to hear that. Now, just to calm you down, I'm not preaching on that for 3 years. I know, I'm already seeing it going, holy cow. No. But we will be having classes and opportunities so we can help you because we all are needing that help. We've just come through one of the most difficult financial periods of the last couple of decades. It's been really, really tough. And I know many of you have gone through things that are way beyond your control. You've done your job, you worked diligently, you've been smart, and yet the economy has been shrinking, and many of you have lost it. And I want you to know, I respect people who have struggled through that. I do. And that's a completely different story. But I also want to tell you that Ben and I and Todd and our whole staff hear story after story about the heartache that's come, not because the economy has shifted, but because we have made bad decisions. And so we're going to be talking about that quite a bit. Well, today we begin with the Proverbs on financial management and decisions about how we do things in healthy ways. If you've been doing the Proverbs challenge, then this week you started seeing some of those Proverbs. We said last week we'd like to challenge everyone to take the book of Proverbs and take your calendar, and for every corresponding day, read that chapter in the book of Proverbs. So in a month, you'd read the whole book of Proverbs. And on a 30-day month, then, double up on the last one, and your wife will really be glad you did when you honor her as that Proverbs 31 kind of wife. But the Proverbs challenge has all kinds of really good wisdom, and it is the basis for the stuff that Larry Burkett and Crown Financial and Good Sense and Dave Ramsey's stuff. And today I want to start pointing out nuggets. Now, if you've been reading Proverbs, I talked to someone just a few minutes ago that said, we're used to reading this long account or the story, and that's not how Proverbs is. In fact, it's not indexed. You don't read a chapter that says, hey, these are all the things about marriage. Instead, Solomon just throws out nugget after nugget after nugget. So if you're looking for continuity, you won't find it. I used to get really frustrated by that until one day I realized, you know what? That's not the way he thought. That's not what God inspired. I need to deal with that. Every one of those nuggets are jewels. And so just take a crown and put all the jewels in the appropriate places. And chapter after chapter, you'll see common nuggets. And that's kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to look at foundational principles. But the one that I want to start with is really sort of the bedrock for everything else. And it's going to be in chapter 13 of Proverbs. And this one, if you want to mark a proverb that says, this is my life, this is my world, this is it. Proverbs 13:7 gives us the foundational issue. It says this: one man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. Now, to me, I read that and I realize this is what has happened in our culture. We have a culture where we have been taught and enabled to pretend to have something we don't have, to have the ability to live at a level we really don't have. And throughout the last 20 years especially, we've had a business society or banking society and a government that has allowed us more and more latitude to get ourselves in more and more trouble. And so we live a life that portrays something we really cannot pay for. We live ahead of that debt, and about the time we get to the end of that, it's all worn out and gone, and so we just get into a cycle. The people who really have great wealth, they don't live that way. In fact, I remember reading years ago a book that we're going to talk about a little bit today, The Millionaire Next Door. It's written 10 years ago. I've quoted it 2 or 3 times, and I'll keep quoting it because it still hasn't sunk in on most of us. That most of us, if we look at our society and you see someone, you think, gosh, that person is wealthy. If they look wealthy, the authors of the book said, you have an 80% chance or greater that all you're looking at is debt run amok. They're pretending. I don't know how many millionaires you know. I know lots of them. And they do not look like they're wealthy people. They don't. Because they practice one of the very first principles of Proverbs. And that principle is that you live well below your means. You live well below your means. Listen to what the Proverbs say. Proverbs 21:20 says, the wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get. They spend whatever they get. The wise people say, this is the boundary, and I'm going to go under that. Now, if I were to stack up the books I've read on personal finance, they would be about this high, because I started reading them when I got myself in trouble in my 20s. And when I go to Barnes & Noble now, if you see me there, I'm probably sitting somewhere. I mean, I'm doing one of two things. I'm either walking around with one of Dave Ramsey's books with a face gone out, and I'm yanking chains. Hey, how are you? You want me to sign that for you? Cost you $10. If I'm not doing that, then I have a cup of coffee and I'm speed reading personal finance books or leadership books. Because after you've read a few, it's kind of like marriage books, the common things you can see. If you've read, like I've read probably 150 books on marriage. I mean, it's my job. So I can pick up a marriage book and I can read it pretty fast because, yeah, heard it. Hey, that's a nugget. And a grande Americano will get me through a book if I'm really concentrating on it. So seriously, stack like this, and I will tell you, every single one of them have these common denominators. They all talk about budgets. You have to plan what you're doing. They all talk about spending less than you make, and they all include something about putting something away to save for the future. All the Christian resources add one more, and that you honor God with your best and your first. Every one of them, you can find those principles. They'll be there. It's not rocket science. It's not news. It's not like someone came out of nowhere and say, you know, these sound like great, innovative, strange, out of this world kind of experiences. No, they're basic. They're basic. The wise spend within their means. They choose to be below that. In fact, the millionaire next door said the three most magical words you'll ever hear in the lifestyles of those folks across the board, the most common factor of those who have a net worth of $1 million or more is this. They are frugal, frugal, frugal. You've heard this before, right? You spend within your means. Second, principle number 2, plan and prepare for the future, both the opportunities and the crises. I don't know about you, but I know that I'm going to have a crisis when I least expect it. And you will too, whether you realize it or not. There will be an opportunity to do something wonderful if you're prepared for it. And if you're not, you'll watch that and somebody else will take advantage of it and you'll miss out. This summer, many of you had a white van pull up in front of your house because your air conditioner went out. That was cheap. That only cost you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, just like that. Some of you had electrical appliances that went out on a regular basis this summer because with all the power brownouts that were happening and the surges and stuff, they were not getting all the power they normally do, which is not good for those. I replaced some stuff on our refrigerator this summer. You probably did too. All kinds of things that didn't quite work the way they were supposed to because they weren't getting enough power. That hurt. Some of you spent a lot of money as things broke down. Some of you had health issues. This weekend we had a family who's going through cancer treatments, and they had a daughter who was involved in a huge wreck. That's not planned, but the wise get ready for it. Listen to what Proverbs 22:3 says. A prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going, and they suffer for it. We have to be alert. We have to know that stuff happens. It does. To the best and the worst of us. Something's going to happen. A car is going to break down. You're going to have a crisis of some sort, and wise people get ready for it. They are watching what's happening around them. They say, I need to plan with that in mind. Listen to what Proverbs 21 says. Verse 5 says, the plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty, surely to poverty. I was in my 20s when I heard this first time. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I mean, just the concept of budgeting, just the concept of saying, wow, what if I, instead of just kind of doling out money every time I got a bill, instead of every time I needed something, I just handed out cash, what if I stepped back and said, you know what, we're going to think this through. Before we commit $1, we're going to think this through. Do you know if you do that one thing, that puts you in the minority of our culture? We don't think. We react. You take the step and you, as a diligent person, make plans. Then you know, does this fit? And opportunities that come your way, you have a filter through which you can work them to say yes or no, and to know that you did what was wise and prudent. You got to have a plan, but even more important is the willingness to work the plan. That's what the book of Proverbs calls diligence. Principle number 3, Proverb principle number 3 is deal with your debt. Deal with your debt. Consumer debt, in spite of everything that's happened, consumer debt continues to be an issue for most American families. Jason Mann works for a stock brokerage, and I called him one day and said, hey, Jason, do you have the latest stats on American debt and how we deal with it? Oh, yeah. And he brought me a packet. And after the first 3 hours, I was finally figuring out what all the legends meant. And looking at all these things, but there are graphs that are flowing, and you saw the ebb and flow even with the recession, and you see it tick right back up, approaching where it was. We've learned almost nothing. And you have the mortgage part, and then about 25% above that, you have all the consumer debt. And consumer debt, I would basically classify as this. You are borrowing money about stuff that's losing value every second you have it. You're burning money that's disappearing. As soon as you unpack a shirt from the store, its value has dropped. As soon as you drive a car off the lot, its value has dropped. As soon as you pull out a credit card and pay for a meal, within a few hours, that meal is gone, literally. But you're still paying for it. We do that in our country. And it is the core of how we finance our economy, but it's also the core of how we torpedo our families. We're learning, not just as families, we're learning as an international community of countries, the principle of the Proverbs that says the borrower is slave to the lender. It's not just individuals. It's not just a little family here, a little family there. Now you have whole leagues of nations, and they are scratching their heads, and they're watching each other's economies go up and down because we have not dealt well with debt at all. One way or another, we have to face it. We have to. We have no choice but to deal with it. And here's the thing that's troubling to me. There was a time when our cultural system, our mores, said, what you borrow, you must repay. Today, we live in a culture where that more is going out the window, and most of us don't have a clue for how we'll actually settle it. You talk to someone who's bought a house and you say, what kind of mortgage do you take out? 30 years. Great. So you're planning to pay out that 30 years. Well, yeah, but I'll probably refinance in a few years. You'll refinance to 15. No, I'll get a cheaper 30. And then we do it again. And we do it again. We just delay that. What was once buying a car was a 24-month deal, and you paid 20% down. And then they went to 36 and 48 and 60. We thought 5 years on a car was a long time. And now you can do 6 or 7 years. And then it got even sweeter because they said, hey, don't even buy the car. You don't need that asset. And you don't need the bank. Just borrow it and pay leasing. And at the end, you just turn it back in. And you start all over with nothing. Home equity loans. I can remember sitting in the office of a banker when the legislation was before the Texas legislature, and they approved home equity loans and said, you've paid for this house, now you can take it out and spend it on other things. And I remember that banker saying, you watch. This will destroy our country. I said, Rex, that's a really strong statement. Come on. He said, when you take things from stable assets and you can pull stuff out readily, that money rarely goes to anything as stable as that. and it has a tendency to disappear. So now instead of being 10 or 15 years into a 10 or 15-year-old house, you are 2 years into paying off a 20-year-old house. And he was right. To our pain and our dismay, he was right. You have to deal with debt. Principle number 4 is the one you won't find in Personal Finance for Dummies, but you'll find it all through the book of Proverbs, and is that you commit your life to the Lord. You commit your mind, your body, your strength, your skills, your wealth, your assets, your earning, your future. You say to God, I am yours. I belong to you. And I will choose to follow you and honor you in all that I do. I mean, you can start at the very first Proverbs, and you'll get there on the 3rd of October. Chapter 3 is chock full of this. I remember memorizing this as a kid. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 said, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will, what He wants in all that you do, and He will show you which path to take. He's interested. He's involved. He wants to work in your life. And as the Creator who designed you and knit you together in your mother's womb, He has a pretty good idea how your life is going to work. He goes on, verse 9 says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce. Then He will fill your barns with grain and your vats will overflow with good wine. He's painting this picture that says, you honor me, I'm going to honor you. I will fulfill your needs. Now, many of us have things that we need, and there are things we want. 4x4 with King Ranch leather, that's not exactly a need, it's a want. My wife says it's sure sign of insanity on the brink of midlife crisis. It's a want, it's not a need. God does not promise me, Bruce, you're gonna experience that. He doesn't say, I'm gonna fulfill all your dreams. I'm gonna fulfill all your wants. You're gonna have everything you ever wanted. That is a lie. It is. Everything you ever wanted. What you need? I know a lot of families in our church that have suffered unemployment. In fact, I have a file all the time on my computer of resumes. And I wait. And if you want to send me one, send me one. And I'll read through it. And I'll hold on to it. And I'll get jobs. Somebody will ask me every once in a while, hey, do you know anybody? Let me check. And it's been a great blast for me to send those resumes and see some people get jobs. I love that. If you know of a family who struggled, and it's not about getting their wants met, but you have families who are missing meals, I need to know that. A lot of times people suffer and they get no help because we don't even know. That's what we do as a community of faith. That's appropriate, isn't it? Don't you expect that? We need to know that. God says, you honor me in this, and I'm going to take care of you because partly you're going to be putting into effect the plans that He, as the designer, has revealed. You be responsible. You do these things. You follow this plan. God says, this is going to produce good things, or in terms of what we've been talking about, greater things in your life. It's going to fulfill your needs. And if those needs are not met because that employment has done that, they ought to happen because your family knows and comes alongside and says, we're going to walk with you through this. Doesn't that make sense to you? But there's another statement that comes in Proverbs, and I have seen it be true too many times. God says, I'm going to lay out for you the design. This is how life works. You honor me and you follow these instructions, and I will be at work in your life, and I will bless you. And so we hear that, and we look at these principles. live well within your means. That's a good idea. And you need to plan for the future. That's a great idea. You need to deal with your debt. Boy, you know what? You're absolutely right. You need to honor God with all your life. That is a great idea. But I'm going to do what I want because it's my life. See if you find this as interesting as I do. Proverbs 19:3 says, people ruin their lives by their own foolishness and then are angry at themselves. Is that what it says? Then they're angry at the person who made all those foolish choices. Is that what it says? No. They run their lives and they ruin their lives on their own stuff. And who do they get mad at? They get mad at God. God, I'm so mad that I got pregnant while I was fooling around when I had very clear instruction that I was to save myself for a spouse someday. This is your fault. I'm sorry and I love you. This isn't his gig. God, my finances are a mess. You've made so many choices you could have honored me in, and you chose to set yourself up. This is your gig. God, I'm so mad. I lost my temper, and I told my boss off, and I lost my job for it. Why did you let that happen? Because I gave you a mind. And the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And you did not seek it. God, it was just one lie. Just one lie. And it destroyed my relationship. Why did you do that to me? See, we live in denial. We live in the bliss of naivete. We look at everything else, and we, as a culture, we want to shift responsibility to somebody else and say, it's not my fault. But it is. I'm not talking about you who have gone through years of being faithful employees and have felt the crunch, but you are paying for somebody's choices. And it still comes back to the same common denominator. You're paying for the graft and the greed and the irresponsibility that now has gripped you. And there are many of you I know who have lived responsible, godly lives, and you're being affected by it, and you're experiencing the fact that when you live in a fallen world, sometimes that fallen world takes you too. And that's where our role as a church family is, to bear each other's burdens. That's scriptural. Can't tell you how many times in the last month or two I've been in a store, I've been getting my oil changed or something. I've seen somebody I haven't gotten to talk to in a while, and just bear the hearts. Families have fallen apart, or a divorce has happened, or they've had to declare bankruptcy, or they haven't had a job in 6 months. And I hear the stories. And I got to tell you, my heart, it's just heavy. I start trying to think of, okay, how can I put that name in front of somebody that might have a job? But the next question is, all right, what are you doing to survive now? And most of them have family or they have support systems. And every once in a while you find somebody says, well, we've had rice and beans, beans and rice, and I know every kind. And I know where to get it cheaply. That's time to step in. But by and large, that's not the bigger problem. The problem is we get married and we think we're supposed to have the big house and the big cars immediately, and we can't afford it, so we use the instruments that are available to us, and we're upside down. We can't figure out how to pay the mortgage, but we pay for a cruise because that's what's expected. And we're upside down. And some of us live in denial for years. And then one day we wake up and we say, I have a choice to make. I can either Continue this and let everything fall where it is, and I will be embarrassed. I will be powerless and penniless, or I can take a new tack on life and I can choose to do something about it. If I tell you that's a good idea, you probably won't listen. But you might listen to two people who are sitting where you were sitting just a few minutes ago.
We had done very well when we first married, budgeting and saving money and doing things, but then with kids, it kind of brought up a little more, things of, okay, it's got to be stretched here, and they want to play this sport and do this activity. So it became more of, okay, where is all the money going?
We're not fighters, we're not, we hardly ever fight, but the few times that we would, it would be financial reasons. And both of us, I guess, for whatever reason, were raised to where we just weren't very smart with money.
But I think the biggest thing is just how much lack of communication there was in our relationship about our finances.
It just kind of became something needs to change.
Usually, you have the one it talks about where one is the saver and one is the spender, and we're both spenders.
I am the financial guy. I'm the numbers guy, always have been.
I think the main thing was just looking at what we made and saying this is what we can realistically do with that.
Looking at how much money we spent on going out to eat and things that, you just look at your checkbook at the end of the month and you're living paycheck to paycheck, but you're doing it to yourself.
We started with a lot of debt. We both had, by the time it was said and done, $100,000 in student loans.
Society just puts so much pressure, I think, on people to have the best of everything. Even with the budget we did have, it wasn't enough. We needed to do something different. We were able to to learn through a class on how to change our family and how to teach our own children about money.
It changed our lives completely. Everything that we did changed our lives.
We can live, and at times it still feels paycheck to paycheck, but everything's been paid.
We just found $30,000 laying around that we could pay off debt with. It's jaw-dropping.
We're not reliant on credit cards, or we're not reliant on loans.
There's just peace in the household. We know at the beginning of each month what everything is going to, and there's no variations on that.
It's that stability that really has helped us, I think.
We're looking at, even with student loans and everything, just a couple years, and everything is going to be, there's going to be nothing. That is so freeing.
It has bettered our relationship. It's been able to sit down and talk about our family and about our life and, changing our future, changing our family tree for our kids.
They can go and they can do their dreams and they can just get everything that they want to without having money problems hanging over their heads their whole life. They'll just be free of that, and they can just pursue whatever they want to do.
I asked him as we were talking, what took you so long? Why? I don't know. One said, maybe we thought we weren't in as bad a shape as we were. We thought, well, we'll just figure this out on our own. And finally, we got tired. And so they took a class. And it changed their lives. This summer, Ramsey hosted this webinar about the Great Recovery. And, I'm just going to confess, I'm a little bit of a cynic. And I go, okay, what's this going to cost me? What am I going to have to buy? What part, how am I going to have to do all this? And I thought, okay, I'm going to tune in. I'm just going to listen. And he talked about having a national culture in churches where we ramped up our help to families and said, we're going to do this more than just one little class or one little place. We're going to do it across the board to try and help families make a difference. And he said this, he goes, you don't have to use our stuff. We like our stuff, but we all learn from the same place. All of us are teaching out of the Proverbs. In fact, all of us that are doing that now look back to Ron Blue and Larry Burkett as the fathers of all this. We're all using the same material. It's packaged different. Use use that one, use this on the internet, use this course, whatever you do, but do something. And I realized as I was watching that we as a church family, had a moral obligation to the families of our community to say, if you're in trouble and you can't find your way out, it won't be because we didn't make it available. And so when you go to the Compass, you'll find one whole column of stuff. And as soon as it empties out, we'll order more. The rest of this fall and the next 3 years, you're going to see opportunity after opportunity. Everything from large class like financial peace to here are the internet sources, and we're going to have a budget workshop, to having coaches that sit down with couples and say, I'm not going to make a buck off this. I'm going to give you time. I can only give it to a few couples, but we're going to walk through this and we're going to talk turkey. Here are your choices. But all of that will still come down to one common denominator. It will depend on what you do. I have a dream that 3 years from now, we could look at each other across these aisles and say, we're in a much healthier spot than we were. And God has been good to us in that journey. And you'll have testimonies like those peppering our congregation, saying, we had no idea that this was attainable. And we're free. That's the road to greater things. Would you pray with me? Father, I thank you for the wisdom that you've given us right in our hands in your word. And even today, Father, I know that there are many who are here who showed up just to be a part of a worship service, probably didn't plan on this topic or this happening. But God, I pray that today your Holy Spirit has touched some hearts with a desire and a will to take a step in a completely different direction. To take responsibility, to step up to the plate with new habits and a new hunger to learn habits they don't know now. Father, I pray you'll give us ample opportunity to help pour into the lives of families as they seek your guidance, as they just read through the Proverbs and start putting into practice the things they see, as they glean those resources and they find encouragement for other couples, other families, other individuals who have taken those steps and found the freedom on the other side of getting healthy. And Father, in all these things we pray that it'll affect how we honor you, that it'll affect our integrity, that it'll affect the impact we can have on the kingdom that you are calling us to live out here, because we've given and we've been good stewards of what you've entrusted to us with our own families, with our church, with the community you've placed us in. Father, I also pray for those who are visiting today, who are just starting this journey with us, who would look at this and say, this is an opportunity for our family to get healthy. And Father, I pray you'll give them great confidence and courage as they tackle the challenge that they have in their family. Help us to be the kind of church family that will undergird those who are suffering, who will challenge those who've been unwise, who will offer healing to people who've been broken. That in all those things, you might receive honor and glory. That we ask today in Jesus' name.
Thanks for joining us for today's podcast. To find out more, visit us at www.fbcmidlothian.org. FBC Midlothian, where we're transforming our community one changed life at a time.